All right, welcome back to Firewall. This is, I guess, in a way, the second part of a special series. We had Gabe Tusk on the other day in talking about her graduating from high school and what it's like to be a teenager. And this is our Father's Day episode. And with us is my father, Gabe Tusk. Dad, how you doing?
Good morning. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. So you're 79 years old. You'll be 80 in about 6 months or so. How does that feel?
It doesn't feel any different than when I was 78 or 77 or 50. Your grandfather, when Jaime turned 90, I said, "Pop, you're 90. What's it feel like to be 90?" And he said, "I know I'm old, and it's clearly, but in my head, I don't feel any different than when I was 30." So
same thing. So
yeah.
like, if you would have, okay, so that he would have turned 90, what, about 15 years ago, 20 years ago? Something like that, right?
Something like that.
So what do you think that would have put you in your very late 50s. So then what do you think you would have thought about how you'd be at 79 compared to how you are?
Good question. I didn't think about it. I really never thought of, what am I going to be like, 20 years in the future. Just never that.
And do you think, is that your personality, or do you think that you just stopped thinking about that once you hit a certain age?
I think it's more of a personality that I didn't, sometimes it's good and sometimes maybe you should be planning ahead a little bit more, but,
right.
You are who you are.
You take it more as it comes. So what gets better as you get older?
It's a good question. So when we were working in the office, someone asked me something. At your age, what was like the best stage of your life? And I said, like right now.
Why?
Why? Because my kids, you and Marla and everyone, they're all good. They're grown, doing well. There's no real pressure or responsibility about that. Mm-hmm. I'm very fortunate that I can come to work every day and be with really smart young people, and I enjoy being there. And on the other hand, I have the flexibility to go and come as I need to. Of course, I'm always there because I like being there, but that's besides the point. So if you take all of that together, I ran businesses, for many years, and it's a lot of pressure, running a business, a small business, when especially in the garment center, when you never had enough money to finance everything you needed and you were borrowing. It was difficult. Sure. So at this point in my life, all those pressures are gone, and I think this is kind of the best part of it.
So, it's funny, there was a story in the Wall Street Journal this morning about Biden's sort of cognitive decline, and sort of interviews with a lot of different people in meetings who just say, like, he doesn't talk at all, or he just defers to aides, or speaks very softly. That's not, you're a few years younger than Biden, but not much, but you were in seemingly very good shape, both physically and mentally. What do you do to be in good shape?
I don't know that I do anything different, because the whole Biden cognitive decline, you think about that, and maybe it's wishful thinking on my part, but I don't feel that I'm any less capable than I was 20 years ago.
No, but I would say that in order to, and I'm not saying Biden hasn't done this too, but in order to age well, you have to take care of yourself.
Yes.
You exercise.
Yes.
You have a job that requires a lot of thinking. You do all kinds of crossword puzzles and things that require mental stimulation. So like, what's the routine?
Oh, well, routines like now the Times seems to be, I don't care about the news, but they have all these great word games in the morning.
It's become their true business model.
That's their business model, and I'm part of it, and I sign up for all of them. But I really enjoy it. Like, the first thing in the morning, I make a pot of coffee, and I do the spelling bee, and then I do the connections, and I do Wordle.
Yeah, you really impressed Laurel when you met her, because you get to the, what's the level above genius on the spelling
Queen
bee?
bee.
Queen bee. You get, she usually just gets genius.
They have statistics. Now what they do to rope you in is they give you statistics.
Sure.
So once you have statistics, like a sports fan, you want to know. So I calculated, so I get to Queen bee 93.4% of the time. So that's kind of, there are times you just can't. But yeah, so it's fun.
How often do you exercise?
I try to get to the gym at least 3 times a week.
And what do you do there?
Combination. I mean, on different days, I'll work out pretty hard. Like on days I'm doing cardio, I try to do the high intensity, the HIIT type of stuff. Mm-hmm. So I'll jump rope, And then, for instance, I'll do a set of 50 jumps, then I'll lift some weights. Then I'll do another set of 50 and lift more weights. It's like the other day I was in the gym, I did like 11 sets of 50, like 500 jumps and lifting weights. So you want to do...
Does anyone there tell you, like, hey, slow down, you're too old?
No, no one says that, but one of the trainers that I know there told me to cut back on the weight. I kept increasing the weight that I was lifting.
It's sort of like your queen bee cystic, so you want to keep progressing.
You want to keep progressing, and he
Right.
said, you're ultimately going to wind up with a weight that's too heavy for you, and you're going to hurt yourself, you're going to tear a muscle. Just do more reps.
Yeah,
that's
probably wise. Do you still play basketball ever?
No, they took that out. I used to shoot baskets, but when the gym got taken over by the new company, they took the basket.
Bastards.
Yeah.
And, you go to work every day, but, you don't have to, right? As a family, we're financially secure enough that you'd be okay either way. What makes you want to do that?
I like being there. Corey sits right across from me, and I get to talk to Corey. I love working with Greg. He's a terrific... I mean, all the people there. I enjoy being with other people. I don't want to sit home by myself all day.
No, and it's funny. I remember one time Mom texted me, and she said, "Oh, Dad's out at happy hour doing trivia with the team." And I was like, "I wasn't invited to that." It's like, in many ways, you're like the good side of me there.
I remember that was we were still in the old place,
the old office, yeah.
In the old office, and it was funny. And all the people going were young women, so it was like Melissa and all the young women. And the first category in the trivia were tusks, things with tusks.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, and we didn't even set that up. And you socialize with people from the office too. I mean, you're going to a wedding in San Miguel de Allende, Mexico in September. I'm not even going to that.
You could.
It's very far away.
Yeah. No, I
remember the point you made about all the pressures of running a business.
You got them now.
Yes.
Yeah. No, because I like the people there. So if I have a chance to socialize with them, and especially when they have the little kids, we had a while back, Megan and Greg came over with their little kids, and we had a brunch, and the babies were cute,
right.
and it's
our workforce is at that age where there's lots of weddings and lots of kids being born.
I would say in the past 2 years we've had at least 15 new babies.
Wow!
And there's Alex still waiting for another one. So
that should be an idea now.
Yeah.
Traveling, you and Mom went to Japan recently. I would say you guys do, you leave the country probably a couple of times a year. Yeah. What did you think of Japan?
I loved it. I really, I had no expectation.
You'd been before.
No. First,
when I was a kid, you would go to Asia all the time for work. That wasn't, you never went to
Japan? No, because you couldn't manufacture things in Japan at the prices I needed. I was in Hong Kong, in China, in Indonesia, and places like that.
Yeah. And so what did you like about Japan?
I liked the fact that it was kind of a very clean, orderly world. Mm-hmm. We thought the food was great.
Yeah.
We really enjoyed it. The people are very polite, nice, but more than that, I got the feeling that when you interacted, they wanted you to really like what they were showing you and telling you. And once we left, Tokyo was kind of boring. There was nothing much in Tokyo. But once we left Tokyo, we just saw some great stuff. We stayed at a traditional Japanese hotel, a ryokan, mm-hmm. in a place called Hakone, up in the mountains. We got there via tram railroad, then a cable car, and then a boat. But we eventually got there. And whoever organized the trip, it's a hot spring spa.
Right.
And so there's a kind of communal area, but our room had its own tub, own hot springs tub. Nice. And we had this beautiful, I haven't showed you the pictures yet, but this beautiful Japanese garden, backyard. And then, afterwards you get into your kimonos. And again, they have a dining room where people go in their kimonos and eat. Yeah. But because we had this particular room,
you didn't need to go there.
We were served in our room, so it was like a 2-hour. It was really nice.
And you liked Kyoto?
I liked Kyoto. I liked Osaka a lot. I thought it was really interesting.
What about it?
It was first the cast. We just finished watching Shogun.
Did you like it?
Yeah. And a lot of it took place in Osaka Castle, so you were just kind of looking around, and then we got into a section of Osaka where they had the street food and all that stuff, and we tried the octopus dumplings and
Did you have any horse sashimi?
no, it was on the menu at one of the places we went to.
Yeah, I'm glad we weren't you away from it.
They didn't call it sashimi; they called it carpaccio.
Yeah.
But I was saying we were in Osaka. We were walking around this area, and Mom said to the guide, "This kind of reminds me of Coney Island, the fried food." The guy said it was purposely modeled on Coney Island.
Really?
Yeah, this section of Osaka was modeled on Coney Island. So.
And where have you not been? You've been to a lot of places, obviously. Where have you not been that you still want to check out?
I've not been to Australia, and I have no great desire to travel there.
Okay.
Or New Zealand. So we've been fortunate enough to see most of the places that we wanted to.
Right.
And now it's a matter of which places do you really like and where do you want to go back or see more. I like going back to France because we have family there,
Yep.
and I like them. So it's kind of every couple of years, it's nice to get together and spend some time with them. And then we go someplace when we're in France. So one of these days we'll plan a trip and get to see them again. But
Right.
there's no place specific that that's on the.
Well, I know you're taking Ben. So you have a tradition where after each of your grandkids gets bar bat mitzvah, you and Mom take them on a trip. So you took Abby to Venice and Florence and Rome,
yeah.
and then you took Ellie and Lyle together to Venice and Rome, and Marla and I met you over there. Ben, who's getting bar mitzvah next March at Giant Stadium.
Yes.
His choice was what? Canton?
Yeah, Canton, Ohio, right.
Yeah.
I said, Ben, I'll take you there anyway. Let's pick someplace else. So we're still negotiating with Ben. I don't know. Clearly I tell him you want to go wherever you want to go, but I don't want to take them to sit on a beach. They can go do that with their parents.
Yeah,
I'd like to
and
take them.
They do those trips a
They
lot.
do those kind of trips. Because, we'll go to the Bahamas. I said, no, we're not going to go to the Bahamas. You go there with your parents. You can sit on the
Right.
beach. I want to take you someplace interesting.
Yeah.
So
Charlotte. Yeah.
Right. So we're still negotiating with Ben.
Your career, sort of looking back on it, and obviously it's still going, but what were the decisive moments, and is there anything looking back that you say, well, I wish I had done this and you didn't do it?
Well, let me philosophize a little bit.
Okay.
I told you this is kind of the stage of my life that I'm happiest and feel the best in. And I kind of take the attitude that all the things that came before had to happen for me to be where I am now.
Okay. Yeah.
So, like everyone else, made my share of mistakes and all of that along the way.
Yep.
And had jobs that I wasn't all that happy with. But I just, at least internalized it. If I hadn't had all of that, I wouldn't be here now, and I'm happy now, so I don't regret or wish I did anything different, because I couldn't change it anyway, so what the hell's the difference?
That's a good answer. So I turned 50, as you know, about 6 months ago. If I want to have your level of energy and health in 29 years, 30 years, what would you recommend
Just
to do?
keep doing what you're doing. You're exercising, you're so active and everything. Yeah, just keep doing what you're doing. And there's a certain amount of luck. I mean, you have to, people get sick and people die from diseases, and there's nothing you can do about that. And we've all at this point in our lives had friends who have gone that you just, have to be lucky. Not to get any of that, but otherwise, if you keep an active life and you try to, be engaged and do things, and you should be able to.
What's the sort of best, if any, advice? Is there any point in your life where someone said like, "Hey kid, this," or any stage, and it just stuck with you and it has sort of benefited you over your whole life?
I don't think so. I mean, I think my father, to the degree that Jaime survived the war and went through all kinds of things, and I remember when you were born, we were living in Brooklyn, and then Mom was pregnant with Marla, and they said, "Okay, let's get a house." And we're looking at houses, and everything seemed to be very expensive, and you had to take a mortgage, and what if I couldn't make the payments, and you're worried about that. And Jaime's advice is, You live in America. They're not going to shoot you. If you can't make the mortgage, you'll move back to Brooklyn. Stop worrying. Go ahead and do what you know. Don't be afraid to do things.
Right. And that was his ethos, I think.
Yeah,
In general.
Yeah, I mean, look, he survived the war. He survived the prisoner of war camp in Russia. He came to this country and built the foundation that we all have, that we're living from. So, we're here at P&T. I mean, you know.
What about from the Navy? Anything you took away from that experience?
It was a great experience. You know, at the time,
Yeah.
I think it's almost required. If you're in the military, you're going to moan and groan and bitch about everything. That's just the way it is. In retrospect, it was a great experience for me. You spend most of your life working. That's what you do. I mean, what do you spend the most years of your life? You're working. Now, here it was. I had a period of 4 years. It was kind of an adventure. I mean, how many people get to fly off the deck of an aircraft carrier?
Right.
You know, how many people get to be in some of the places I was? You know, stand shore patrol in the middle of.
But you also lost friends.
Yeah.
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 I
No,
mean,
no, it wasn't all great. It wasn't all
during Vietnam.
Yeah, it was during Vietnam, and we were in combat. No, we were in Vietnam, so we lost people. There's no question about it. But the experience. I mean, I don't know if you remember when you were working for Chuck Schumer. I kind of pitched to you. I think we should have mandatory universal. Yeah, and your answer to me was Chuck would like to get reelected. He goes, this is not a winning strategy.
I was right, and that is still exactly what Chuck would like.
But you were espousing.
So my most recent column in the Daily News, the only difference was and obviously 20-something years has passed since then, the nature of warfare has changed so much that you couldn't possibly have all of these bodies in the American military. So I made the case to say service, but that could be tutoring or mentoring or picking up trash in parks or whatever.
I said the same thing.
You did. Okay, you weren't putting everyone in the
I
Navy.
would, but no, you don't need that many people in the military. But I think, and you made the case of the startup companies coming out of Israel, how the founders are more mature.
Yeah.
And I think having that experience of real life and not going from school to school to school is advantageous.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, at one point when you and Marla were both looking at colleges, I brought up
Annapolis.
The academy.
You know, in retrospect, I think that probably for me would have been better than Penn.
Yeah.
For me. For Marla, probably not.
And you would have put in a few years in the.
It would have been fine.
It would have been fun. Look, you know. So I think it was a great experience. I still have friends. I mean, it was the last October. I was down in Asheville, North Carolina. I met with 2 of my shipmates.
Yeah.
Guys.
Look, when we opened the bookstore 2 years ago, you had Navy friends come to the opening.
Yeah.
That was amazing. You have 4 grandkids. One who's tomorrow. You'll be at her high school graduation. So, what's the purpose in your mind of being a grandparent? Like, how do you look at your job?
Just love them and give them unconditional love. The advice from grandparents isn't always appreciated. The parents have their own ideas of how to raise the kids, which is fine. I look at my kids. I think they've all done good jobs with their kids. I think the grandkids are all good. Each one is different. Each one has a unique personality. Just be there with them, love them unconditionally, and if they need you for anything, I try to be there.
Yeah. As you mentioned, your family survived the Holocaust. And in fact, you spent the first few years of your life living in displaced person camps in Europe. How do you think that shaped your life, and do you think it continues to shape you?
Well, you can't help but shape your life.
Right.
Because growing up, every person that we knew survived something. I was just on Hugo about that. Survived somehow and had a story, and it was all difficult, and everyone lost. I mean, my father, your grandfather, lost 7 siblings and his mother and father. He was a family of 10 people, and he was the only survivor.
Right.
Grandma's family did a little better. My grandfather was killed, but Mom and her siblings and mother survived because they were able to get out of the way of the German army into Siberia. And then all the other people, and you know them, you've met them.
Sure.
They either survived in the woods in Poland, fighting as partisans, hiding from the Germans. people survived the concentrated cousin maybe survived Auschwitz. So that has to have an effect on the way you see the world and how you think. And
Do you think it has made you more afraid or more liberated?
I don't know. I think you accept it as a fact that there's a certain risk to being Jewish where the world isn't going to accept you. And you're not always going to be welcome everywhere. And we see that. I don't think that's a great insight of any kind. But yeah, you kind of internalize that. It's not an intellectual exercise. It's real. It's visceral because you're living with people who are examples of that.
Are you particularly worried about what's happening with Jews and anti-Semitism today, or do you feel like this is just cyclical and this is what happens?
Well, yeah, the United States has been the best place for Jews ever to live in. And I guess at some point in time, Germans, Jews felt the same way in the late 1800s, 1900s. So whatever happened there can happen here. The United States is not immune to any other of the things that happened all over the world. So yeah, there's always that risk that is it going to happen in my lifetime? No.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. I don't think so. But I worry that my grandkids may not be welcomed here.
Right. So then, as Israel goes through this war, is your view Israel needs to do whatever it needs to do to protect itself, and this is what war is, and they didn't start it? Or do you look at what's happening and say, this is too much, they need to stop?
Look, you can take both, look at both ends of it. Mm-hmm. Israel needs to do what it needs to do to protect itself, and it lives in a tough neighborhood, and the people on the other side clearly say our plan is to exterminate you all, and we don't want you here. Hamas has said that over and over. On the other hand, the Israeli government, I have no real confidence that the Israeli government is taking all the right steps. And Netanyahu government seems to be more interested in political survival than in the best interest.
So if there was if Gallant or Gantz or someone else were prime minister doing the exact same things, would you feel differently?
Yeah, I'd feel better about it. That okay, this is what has to be done. It's like when we were just going back to Japan. We were in Hiroshima, and the bomb dropping there was horrible, and the museum showed all that. But what were the alternatives? Evading Japan so as much as, and I understand how the Japanese people feel. It's visceral to them, and it happened. But there were alternatives. Something else would have happened. And the same thing's true in Israel. What are your alternatives? If you don't pursue a certain strategy to keep yourself safe, what else is,
Right, more October 7th. Yeah. And then, so let's ask the same question about the world more broadly. Does it feel more chaotic and unstable to you than any point in your life? Or again, is this just sort of how life is and we always think what's happening at the moment is the worst?
Probably a little bit of both. It feels more chaotic. I think all the technology allows the communications and all kinds of things spread much faster around the world. But we always think that every election I ever remember is the most important election ever in our lifetime. Stuff like that. Every time.
Every election.
It's all you ever hear.
The most important election of our lifetime.
A lifetime. Yeah. Okay. Till the next one. Yeah. That you can always get that sense that things have always been. I mean, I guess the world is better than it was in the Middle Ages and stuff like that. But what's going on? I we live here in the United States, most of Europe and Japan are orderly worlds. But there are lots of people who live in worlds of disorder. If you're living in parts in Sudan, or you're living in Syria, or you're living in there's no government. There's no, Somalia. It's total disorder.
Right.
And people want to get out of there because you can't live a life that way. So you've got that.
Okay, so you're an immigrant, and if you were Biden, or just let's make you king, what would our immigration policy be?
I would be very strong about keeping if you don't have a border that you control, you don't even have a country. You just have like a way station of people coming and going. You have to be able to control your borders.
Yep.
And then you have to have an immigration policy that kind of makes sense for you. So with declining birth rates all over the world, just about every country needs immigrants to keep themselves going.
Yep.
And so you need to look and say, okay, we can absorb X amount of people, and we're looking, besides the highly skilled one, the HB, whatever, visa, leaving that aside, there's highly skilled people that you need, but just as a general population, I think I read something recently where like in about 50 or 60 years, the population of the world's going to peak, and then it's going to go down rapidly because the birth rates in most countries are under 2, and eventually it catches up. So you've got to, I think first is you got to control the borders. And I think probably what he's doing now is political, but I think
No.
no, really. But I think you do have to be able to control your borders and have an orderly system of people coming. You just can't have people pouring over the border randomly.
So would you just significantly increase legal immigration?
Yeah.
Yeah, me
Yeah.
too. You listen to this podcast, you know that I talk a lot about the World Happiness Report and generally kind of about happiness science and behavioral economics. And for people under the age of 30, U.S. is 68th in happiness. So this is the richest, most abundant, successful, thriving country in the history of the world. And yet our young people seem extremely unhappy. Why do you think this is?
I know I read your stuff. So you wrote because they're looking for a cause, for something to be part of, and that's where you came around to some sort of national service, which I agree. I don't know. There just seems to be anxiety built into everyone I know, their kids are going to therapy or something. Everyone's dealing with anxieties and stresses.
Do you think that's the internet?
To some degree.
But the other 67 countries also have the internet that are ahead of us.
But not necessarily as affluent, with as much access, with as many, they may not. I don't know.
Do you think it's sort of weirdly a curse of abundance where we have so much that it becomes sort of it eventually becomes declining, kind of like your population example earlier?
And I think the ethos of the whole country, when I came to this country, the only thing you wanted to become, I was a little kid, I was 4 years old, and I looked around, I wanted to be an American, like all the other kids. I didn't want to be different.
Right.
The ethos was, we were the melting pot kind of thing. We were all going to be one people, and that doesn't exist anymore. We're all different. We've kind of segregated ourselves into different groups, and there's no, the people, when I came to this country, like my cousin Leo, they fought the war, and they felt that they were Americans. It didn't matter where you were from or what you did, and that doesn't exist now. And I think that is part of that may lead to this anxiety. Is you have all this division.
And do you think that's just? Do you think we actually are this polarized, or do you think that it's just our systems of media and voting and everything else make us seem vastly more polarized than we actually are?
I think you are. I think from the polls that you see, if you believe them, the majority of people would like to see some sort of reasonable gun control.
Right.
You can't get politicians to agree on that. They would like some reasonable way of dealing with abortion and unwanted pregnancies. I mean, you don't want to be killing babies, but there must be some way. I think most people agree.
Yep.
Getting politicians on the same page is another story. But like when I was in North Carolina, my friend Robert from Tupelo, Mississippi, come from totally different backgrounds. For the most part, though, when you pick any kind of issue, you could kind of, come to a point where you agree on things. So, yeah, I think a lot of it is just the political system, the way we vote, and also the, newspapers, media companies live on divisiveness and
So, as you know, I believe that mobile voting could be a solution to some of that. One, do you agree? And two, because you do the books, I am pouring vast amounts of my money into this that could go to our family, right? And instead of going to our family, is going to this cause that very well may not even succeed. What do you think?
I think intellectually, I think your analysis makes sense. If it practically ever works, I don't know. It's a huge leap to get the rest of the country to agree to something like that. And I think we're going to need more allies in this kind of. I don't think you do it yourself. I think you're going to need more allies who agree with you and are willing to pour some more resources into it to build some sort of movement. Again, I agree with the thinking behind it because it makes sense. But actually making it happen is, I don't know.
So generally speaking, you're small c more conservative than I am by personality, and you do the books. And I tend to have a philosophy where I want to try to change something or do something, and I just pour tons of money into it, working on the belief that I can always just make more money. To your credit, because you work for me, you are supportive of what I want to do. But here in this podcast, like, does that feel irresponsible to you?
Yeah, a bit. I think
Okay.
you have to be realistic as to what you can accomplish and what you can't. And what I learned when I was in business is you've always been reasonably successful, and you always were able to figure out a way to make things work till you can't. And then it's really hard to accept that, so you keep throwing good money after bad money.
Yep.
You don't know when it's only because you've been successful all along. You don't know when it's time to say, "Oh, this isn't working," because you think you can somehow make it work. I went through that.
Yeah. So I think a couple of years ago I lived that, but between the SPAC that failed, Tele-Religion that failed, the Yang campaign, and by the way, it cost us a lot of money.
I am
right?
aware.
Eight figures. But my hope is at that point I've learned that lesson, and when we're reinvesting in businesses that are succeeding. You raised me a Mets fan. Not the Gabe just sort of motioned and said not the bookstore, but you know what? Even the bookstore, which is literally a tribute to your heritage, is going to lose 30-40% less money this year, so it is being run much better than it has been before. You raised me a Mets fan.
I'm sorry.
Yes, that's what I was going to ask. Do you think that was cruel?
Yeah, but you almost couldn't help it. I grew up in Brooklyn, literally in the shadow of Ebbets Field, and if you grew up in the 1950s, you live in Brooklyn, you want to be an American. It's part of what you wanted to be, and nothing's more American than baseball. And the Dodgers were like Brooklyn. They were the epitome of Brooklyn. They defined Brooklyn. So when they left, and your heroes. I mean, it wasn't just the baseball, but people like Jackie Robinson and Pee Wee Reese were like hero type people. You looked up to them. So when the Dodgers left, there was a vacuum, and the only team left was the Yankees, and you hated the Yankees. You couldn't root for the Yankees after playing them year after year in the World Series and losing, except in '55. So it was hard. Then in '62, the Mets came around, so that was just a natural.
Did you ever think that they would be, historically, suffer this much and lose this much?
There were a few good years.
They've won one. So just to be clear, what you saddled me with, as a Mets fan, they've won one World Series in my life. As a Knicks fan, they've won 0 championships in my life. The Giants have done okay. Not for the last decade; they've been terrible. But 4 Super Bowls is quite a bit. But overall, if you were like a venture capitalist, like, I'm not reinvesting in your fund.
but it builds character. You learn how to lose.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's tricky that my kids are Mets fans, but they're just not baseball fans in the way that you and I are, and I think that's generational to a large part. They still like to go to the games, and like, what's cool now is they're at the age where Abby said to me yesterday, like, "Oh, can I have tickets for Friday night?" And I was like, "Yep." And I just texted them to her, and she'll go with her friends, and she'll get there and she'll get back, and Lyle the same thing. But clearly, the combination of a team that is always losing, combined with a sport that just doesn't seem to hold appeal to young people in the same way, it makes it harder to sustain generations of fans. With all that said, baseball will be what it will be in the sense of it's going to exist, and let's say that its revenue falls by 80% over the next 25 years, it will still exist. The teams will be worth less, the players will make less, but the game itself is not going anywhere.
No, I think so. But I think their total attendance revenue keeps growing. So I don't know that it's been shrinking.
I think that, yes, but I don't know that their new TV deal is going to be, like the NBA just tripled the value of their TV deal, which is really where the money is. I don't think that baseball is looking at anything like that at all. So now look, but the sport is very popular in Latin America. It's getting more and more popular in at least parts of Asia, like South Korea and Japan. So, wherever it comes from, it comes from. But I still think that while I'm proud to be a Mets fan, maybe I should curse the day that you made that decision. You've lived, other than when you were in the Navy, you've basically spent, and when you were a kid in Europe, you spent your whole life in New York. What do you think of it?
That's the best place. There's no place I'd rather be.
Why?
There's just so much going on. There's always something to do. There's an energy about it. Right now we're living on 58th Street near the park, and it's just there are people everywhere, tourists and things are happening. And we go to Carnegie Hall and we go to Lincoln Center, and you have all the cultural. If you like that. I mean, if you want to be on a golf course and go to the beach every day, then don't move to New York.
Right.
But
so some of your friends have moved to Florida.
They have.
And how do you feel about that?
So I was talking to your mother. I said, I'm not ready to retire. I said, but maybe I'm going to turn 80 in January. Give me 10 more years. 10 more years. Maybe I could retire. And I think maybe we'd leave New York and move to Europe and do something different, learn a new language.
Where in Europe would you move to?
I love Venice. I absolutely think.
But do real people live in Venice?
Very few.
It's not just like a movie set?
That's what Lyle said to me. When we took Lyle and Ellie to Venice, we arranged for a boat to take us from the airport to our hotel. At first, I had to get them off their phones. That was step one.
Yeah.
Once I got them off their phones, and as we pulled into Venice, they looked at it. Is this a real place? Is this like a Disney World place we're going to? I said, no, this is like a real city that goes back, 1,000 years or more. And they looked, they said, looks like a movie set. That's exactly what Lyle said.
So you'd have to learn, what languages would you say you at least understand and can converse in some way?
Well, English, Yiddish, Russian. Those three I'm comfortable with. Then you know a few words of Hebrew here and there.
Do you think it'd be tough to pick up Italian?
I'm convinced I can do it. No problem. I could, if I had to, sure, I could pick up. I mean, I was very happy in Japan learning new words. I was busy trying to learn a few words here and there as I went along. So, that doesn't mean I could, but I think I could, All
right, so closing out, this is our Father's Day episode. So for all the people who either are fathers listening to this podcast or are going to be sometime in the near future, what's your words of wisdom to them?
The word wisdom always bothers me. There's no such a thing as anyone. No one has wisdom.
Okay.
What people have are some experiences, and sometimes you can draw some conclusions from experiences you've had. So you may be able to say, "Hey, this is what happened to me, and this is figure out what's best for you." Anyone who tells me they're giving me wisdom, I kind of tune myself out.
Okay, so with that said, what did you learn, good and bad, as a parent that you would pass on?
I don't think there's a playbook but I think you have to know who your kid is and try to understand them and try to, I don't know, your mom and I never had a game plan for raising kids. We just went along. I mean, it would be nice if the kid was born if it came with an instruction booklet. It would be, this is what you need to do. But that's not how it works. You've got to kind of, tailor your personality to the young person that's growing up, to their personality. And I think giving them as much freedom and a chance to not only succeed but also fail without too many consequences is important.
Yeah.
I think you need to give them enough freedom to grow, and if they screw up occasionally, okay, as long as it's nothing,
Too terrible,
it's probably a good thing.
So now that you've been a parent for 50 years, if I said nature or nurture, which is the more important factor, what would you say?
I would say probably nurture, but it's funny. I showed you the picture of your grandmother when she was 23. My cousin Victor sent me the picture, and you look at the picture and you see Abby's face. Abby at 18 and my mother at 23 got the same face. So these things do carry forward, and so that's Abby's great grandmother.
Yep.
And then Ellie, Marla's little girl, has bright red hair, and my mother had bright red hair. So each of my granddaughters has a distinct characteristic of their great grandmother. So yeah, nature plays a big part, but I think ultimately it's the experiences you've had and the way you raise, values you get, and stuff like that.
Good way to close. Dad, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, this was a pleasure. It was fun. Thank you.
Firewall is recorded in my bookstore, P&T Knitwear, located at 180 Orchard Street on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. We'd love to hear from you with questions, feedbacks, or idea for a guest. Just email me at bradley@firewall.media or find me on LinkedIn. And to keep up with what's on my mind and my latest writing, please follow my new Substack at bradleytusk.substack.com. Thanks again for listening.